The rain came without warning, thick, heavy drops pounding the earth like an argument heaven refused to resolve. Naomi stood at the tall window of the east wing, fingers lightly pressed against the cool glass, watching the sheets of water erase the world beyond the estate gates. The mansion behind her hummed with quiet luxury, but she felt none of it sink into her. Comfort meant nothing when the heart was still learning how to breathe again. Her other hand rested on her belly, steady, protective, reverent. 8 months. 8 months of growing life. 8 months since everything shattered. Father Lord, as this story begins, place your mighty hand on the life of the person watching right now. Let every delay in their destiny break, let every hidden blessing rise, and let this be the moment their turnaround begins. And if you truly believe this prayer is for you, don't scroll past it. Subscribe to this channel right now as your step of faith, your confirmation that you are ready for the miracle you have destined for them. Amen. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The child shifted inside her as though sensing her drifting thoughts. She exhaled slowly, the ache in her chest awakening like an old wound. "It's all right," she murmured. "I've got you. I promise." Her voice echoed faintly against marble floors and high ceilings. The billionaire's estate always felt too large, too pristine, too polished for someone who had spent most of her life building a home from effort, not money. Safety was here, yes. Shelter too. But ownership? Belonging? Those feelings hadn't followed her into this new life. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. "Naomi, breakfast is ready," Clara, one of the kinder housekeepers, said. "Mr. Hartman will be down shortly." Naomi nodded with a polite smile. "Thank you. I'll come in a moment." Clara hesitated, just enough to show she cared, then left her alone again. Naomi swallowed hard. Does safety heal, or hide? A question she never dared answer aloud. Reflection plus hidden CTA placed naturally. She looked out the window again and tried for the 1000th time, not to replay the day everything fell apart. Daniel walking away. His face twisted in hurt and disbelief. Her voice failing when she needed it most. The truth, so fragile, so easily destroyed, swallowed by silence neither of them understood. She blinked rapidly, forcing the memories away. Not now. Not today. Not again. She turned from the window. But the past never respected her boundaries. Across town, miles away, unaware of the storm that would soon pull their lives back together, Daniel tightened the straps on his tool belt and slammed the truck door closed. The rain drenched him instantly, flattening his shirt to his skin and dripping from his hair. He didn't bother wiping his face. He just shoved his hands into his pockets and approached the construction site. The world had grown harsher since Naomi left. Or perhaps he'd simply become more aware of its rough edges. "Morning, Dan," one of the workers called. "Looks like the storm's coming to stay." Daniel managed a faint smile. "Fitting. I'm used to storms." The man chuckled and went back to hauling lumber. Daniel wasn't joking. For months he had lived with a hollow ache that refused to heal. Naomi's disappearance, her wedding ring left behind without explanation, had carved a wound he couldn't stitch shut. He tried drowning himself in work, in exhaustion, in denial. Nothing worked. He still woke in the middle of the night reaching for her. He still found her hair ties in odd places. He still folded laundry as though she would walk through the door at any moment. But she didn't. And eventually he stopped hoping. He climbed into his truck to grab a clipboard when he caught sight of his reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes dimmer, jaw sharper, a man older than his years. "This is what starting over looks like," he muttered. He tried to believe it. But even now, buried beneath resentment, abandonment, and confusion, love still throbbed quietly inside him. And he hated himself for it. He closed the door harder than necessary. Work helped. Work numbed. Work silenced the heart. At least it used to. Lately, even that wasn't enough. Naomi walked slowly down the staircase of the mansion, one hand braced on the polished railing. The chandelier above her cast warm golden light that danced over the marble, turning the room into something out of a fairy tale. Except her life was no fairy tale. And the man who owned this mansion, Elias Hartman, was no prince. He was kind, steady, protective. But her heart had not been built for him. She reached the dining room just as Elias entered through the opposite door. His presence filled the space effortlessly, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed even in morning casuals, his expression always a mix of quiet calculation and gentle concern. "Good morning," he said, pulling out her chair before she could reach it. "Good morning," she replied, offering a soft smile. Elias sat beside her instead of across from her, his subtle way of reminding her she wasn't alone. She appreciated it more than she could ever say. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Better," she lied. He rested his hands on the table, studying her carefully. "If you ever need anything." "I know," she whispered, cutting him off despite her intention not to. "Thank you." He nodded, accepting her boundary, though the worry in his eyes remained. They ate in silence for a few minutes, forks clinking gently, rain whispering against the windows, the house breathing its calm, expensive exhale around them. Then Elias spoke again. "The doctor will come by this afternoon," he said. "Just to check in. Routine." She nodded. "And after that, I'd like to show you something. I think you'll like it." "What is it?" "A surprise," he answered. A real smile reached her lips this time. "All right." But deep inside, beneath the peace Elias so carefully maintained around her, something hollow stirred. A longing. A memory. A name she refused to speak. Back in the city, Daniel started his truck, kicked the engine to life and pulled onto the road. The rain hammered harder now, turning the streets into rivers of mud. He didn't care. He drove like a man trying to outrun the echo of a life he'd lost. The wipers struggled, smearing more than clearing, the world ahead dissolving into motion and gray. He didn't see the figure walking near the estate road's bend. He didn't see the swollen belly beneath her coat. He didn't see the woman he still loved. Not yet. But fate does not wait for permission. And by the time he would see her again, the mud splashing from his tires would become the first blow in a storm neither of them were ready for. The rain eased only slightly by noon, thinning from violent sheets to a steady whisper that coated the world in a silver haze. Naomi walked along the estate's outer path, her coat pulled tight around her belly as she tried to clear her mind before the doctor's arrival. The estate grounds were quiet, softened by the storm. The rose bushes glistened. The gravel paths darkened with moisture. Everything smelled of wet earth and fresh greenery, life renewing itself. She needed the air. She needed space. She needed to silence the memories that clawed at her every morning. Her steps slowed when a sharp cramp fluttered along her side. Not painful, just a reminder of how close she was. The baby responded to her discomfort with a small kick. "I'm all right," she whispered, rubbing gently. "I just need a minute." She paused near the gatehouse, breathing deeply, steadying herself. She didn't hear the truck approaching, not until the rumble cut through the softened hush of rainfall. Her heart stuttered. The road outside the estate curved sharply. Vehicles often sped through it. Naomi took a cautious step back from the edge of the road, tucking herself closer to the stone wall. But the truck came faster than she expected. Mud, deep and loose from the night-long storm, lined the gutter on the roadside. The tires sliced through it with brutal carelessness. The splash was instant. Cold, thick water burst upward, crashing against her legs and stomach, soaking her coat, staining her dress, dripping down her hair and face. She gasped, stumbling back from the force of it, one hand flying instinctively to her belly. The truck didn't slow. It didn't stop. It didn't even swerve. It roared past her, disappearing around the bend. Naomi froze where she stood, mud clinging to her like a cruel accusation. Her throat tightened. Tears burned behind her eyes, not from the cold but from a wound that had never healed. Why did it feel so familiar? Why did the shape of that truck? Why did the sound of that engine? Her pulse raced. Something inside her whispered a name she refused to say aloud. She forced herself to breathe, but a trembling sensation climbed her spine, settling bitterly beneath her ribs. She pressed a hand to her belly again, whispering reassurance neither of them felt. "It's okay, we're okay. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." A guard from the estate saw her and rushed forward, alarmed. "Madam Naomi, are you all right?" She nodded, voice barely audible. "Just startled. Let me help you inside." No, I need a moment." Her voice cracked. She cleared it quickly. "Please. I'm fine." The guard hesitated, then stepped back respectfully. Naomi closed her eyes. Her breath shook. The cold seeping into her clothes could not compare to the ache crawling through her chest. Because she knew. Even before she accepted it. Even before she allowed her mind to form the truth. She knew whose truck that was. But she also knew he hadn't recognized her. Daniel was 2 miles down the road before he realized something felt wrong. A heaviness. A shift in the air. A sickening tug deep in his stomach. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Should have slowed down," he muttered to himself. "Road's a mess." But that wasn't what disturbed him. He replayed the splash in his mind, the shape of the figure walking near the estate, the coat, the silhouette, the way the person stumbled back. He exhaled sharply. Probably just a passerby. Happens. But the lie tasted bitter. Something had flickered at the edge of his vision, something that pricked at memory, something that made the hairs on his arms rise one by one. He slowed the truck slightly. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't. He had spent months trying to forget, and even now the idea felt like a trick his loneliness was playing on him. Naomi was gone. She didn't want him. She had made that painfully clear the day she left without explanation. Yet the image refused to leave his mind. Her walk. Her posture. The way her hand had pressed to her stomach. He slammed the brakes. The truck skidded on the wet road, tires catching mud, heart pounding in his ears. No, he whispered, panic rising sharp and sudden. No, it's not her. Don't do this to yourself. But the possibility clawed at him like a phantom. He put his head in his hands, breathing hard, the rain tapping against the roof like insistent fingers. His chest tightened. He blinked quickly, trying to wash the memory away. But memories are cruel. Especially memories of love. And especially when love never truly ended. He started the truck again and forced himself to keep driving, jaw clenched, eyes burning. He would not go back. He could not go back. He wasn't ready to feel that hurt again. But the ache inside him said this moment was not finished. Not by a long shot. Back at the estate, Naomi wiped mud from her face with shaking hands. Elias arrived seconds later, having been alerted by staff. His eyes widened, shock first, then fury. Naomi, what happened? Just a passing truck, she whispered. It was an accident. It doesn't matter if it was an accident, Elias said, removing his coat and draping it over her shoulders with controlled urgency. You're freezing. Come inside. I'm fine. You're not. His voice softened. Please. Let me take care of you. She swallowed hard. His kindness both comforted and suffocated her. As he led her inside, a thought cut through the fog in her mind. What if life gives you one last chance to face the person who broke you? What would you say to them? She didn't know the answer. Not yet. But fate was moving now. And the storm had only begun. Naomi sat on the velvet chaise in her room while Clara gently dabbed the mud from her coat and sleeves. The doctor had finished examining her and assured her the baby was perfectly fine, but the tremor in her hands hadn't faded. Elias stood near the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tense, eyes burning with a protectiveness that made the room feel smaller. He wasn't angry at her, she knew. He was angry at the world. At whoever had done this. At the fact that he couldn't prevent it. You shouldn't have gone walking in this weather, he said finally. She shut her eyes. I needed air. You could have asked me to walk with you. I know. Silence. Heavy. Unspoken. Because she couldn't say the real reason she didn't want him beside her. She couldn't tell him what she had recognized in the blur of tires and mud. She couldn't admit that seeing Daniel's truck felt like being struck by lightning after months of pretending the sky was clear. Another contraction of memory tightened her chest. Elias stepped closer, his voice lowering. Naomi, if something is troubling you, I need to know. Her fingers curled around the armrest. She forced her breathing steady. It was just a splash, Elias. I'm all right. He studied her face carefully. He was brilliant at reading people, at sensing lies even when they were wrapped in gentleness. But Naomi had learned to hide her pain long before she ever met him. He exhaled slowly. I'll have someone check the camera facing the gate road. I want to know who that driver was. Her head snapped up. No, don't. He paused, surprised. Why not? Because it won't change anything, she whispered. But her pulse betrayed her, quick, frantic, fragile. Elias didn't push further, but she could feel the question hanging in the air, thick enough to choke on. Daniel spent the afternoon working with a ferocity that worried even the men who knew how grief had hardened him. He lifted heavier loads than necessary. Hammered with more force than the job required. Worked until sweat mixed with rain and mud clung to his boots like guilt. He couldn't shake it. That silhouette. That instinct. That surge of dread the moment he passed the estate road. And the hand, pressed quickly, instinctively, to a stomach. He gripped a wooden beam and closed his eyes. No. He couldn't think like that. He couldn't imagine Naomi pregnant. Couldn't imagine her carrying another man's child. Couldn't imagine her living in another home, another life, another world. But imagination was cruel, and the storm inside his mind refused to quiet. By the time the sky darkened, Daniel's body ached. He gathered his tools and headed to his truck, shoving everything into the passenger seat with a violence that barely disguised the tremor in his hands. 2 coworkers called after him. "You heading home already? Storm's only getting worse, Dan. Careful on those bends." He nodded, forcing steadiness into his voice. "I'll be fine." But he wasn't fine. Every mile he drove felt like an argument between sense and emotion. His mind begged him to stop thinking. His heart kept dragging him back to the moment of that splash. What if it was her? What if she saw him? What if she hated him now more than before? He slammed his fist against the steering wheel, frustration sharp and suffocating. "I can't." His voice broke off. He didn't know if he meant he couldn't forget or couldn't move on, or couldn't face the truth that maybe he had caused her harm again, even unintentionally. Daniel had always been stubborn, but heartbreak made him cruel to himself. And yet he still didn't turn back. Resistance wasn't just emotional, it was survival. Naomi changed into dry clothes and sat on the edge of her bed, fingers interlaced over her stomach. The rain outside softened to a drizzle, tapping the window like a restless whisper. She closed her eyes and let her mind return, against her will, to the last time she saw Daniel before she left. The argument. The unanswered questions. His anger mistaken for rejection. Her silence mistaken for guilt. She had tried to tell him the truth. She had begged her voice to work. But fear strangled her, and everything collapsed under the weight of misunderstanding. She remembered the moment she walked away, not because she wanted to, but because staying meant watching the man she loved believe the worst of her. Her throat tightened. She whispered into the quiet room, "I never stopped loving you." The words trembled, falling into a space that had no one to catch them. Elias's soft knock broke the silence. "Naomi?" His voice was gentle. "May I come in?" She wiped her cheeks quickly. "Yes." He entered, carrying a small tray with tea and warm towels. He placed it on the nightstand and sat, not beside her, but close enough for her to feel the question pulsing through him again. "You've been quiet," he said carefully. "I'm just tired." He nodded, accepting without believing. Another pause. Then softly. "If there's something from your past you're running from, you don't have to face it alone." Naomi's breath hitched. Not because of his words, but because the past wasn't chasing her anymore. It had found her. And she didn't know what to do with that truth. "I appreciate you," she whispered. "More than you know." Elias looked at her for a long moment. Not with possessiveness. Not with expectation. But with the weight of someone who cared too deeply for a woman who had never promised her heart. He nodded and stood slowly. "Rest. I'll check on you later." The door closed softly behind him. Naomi exhaled shakily. "If running keeps you safe but staying forces you to face your own heart, which path would you take?" Her hands cradled her belly again. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. But the storm outside had its own answer. Rain hammered the asphalt in relentless sheets as Daniel sped down the old highway leading out of town. His windshield wipers struggled to keep up, screeching with every pass. He wasn't even sure why he took this route. Maybe habit. Maybe muscle memory. Maybe something in him hoped to confront a ghost of the past. "Focus," he muttered, tightening his grip on the steering wheel. His job was in shambles. His accommodation was temporary at best. And despite everything he told himself, Naomi haunted him. Her smile. Her quiet patience. The way she used to place his lunchbox in his hand with a gentle, "Don't forget to eat." Those memories cut deeper on days like this. A reflection flickered in him. Pain doesn't disappear just because you walk away from its source. Sometimes absence makes it grow into something you can hardly recognize. CTA hidden smoothly. The wipers swiped again. Up ahead, a figure walked slowly along the shoulder of the muddy road, shielded only by a small umbrella that did little against the storm. A woman, petite in stature, wearing a long gown that clung to her legs with every step. Her left hand rested on her belly as she braced herself against the wind. Daniel didn't slow down. He barely noticed her, just another person caught in the rain, unlucky enough to be outside. But the moment he passed her, everything changed. His tires hit a deep puddle. Whoosh splash. A towering arc of brown water exploded upward, drenching the woman from head to toe. Mud splattered across her gown, her umbrella, her hair, even her face. She stumbled but didn't fall, one hand tightly protecting her stomach as though shielding her child from the world's cruelty. Daniel glanced briefly in the rearview mirror. Just a silhouette. Just a woman. Just a stranger. He didn't see her face. He didn't see the familiar way she tilted her head. He didn't see the trembling hand that once wore his ring. He saw nothing, just a figure he would forget within seconds. Or so he thought. Naomi stood frozen, mud dripping down her eyelashes. She wiped her cheek with the back of her palm, unaware she carried streaks across her skin. Her umbrella sagged to one side. Her breath trembled. She recognized the sound of the engine, the shape of the car, the dent on the bumper he always swore he would fix but never did. Her throat tightened. Daniel? Not a shout. Not a cry. Just a whisper lost in the rain. Her baby kicked, startled by the shock ripping through her body. Naomi pressed her hand to her belly and forced a smile she didn't feel. It's nothing, little one. Just nothing. She began walking again, slow, careful steps, though every part of her trembled from the cold and from the reality she had never wanted to face. Daniel was close enough to touch her fate, yet blind enough to miss the miracle growing inside her. Back inside the car, Daniel felt a strange tug in his chest, an inexplicable heaviness. Something about the woman's silhouette nagged at him. Who walks alone, pregnant in weather like this? Why did that figure feel familiar? He shook his head. Coincidence. Nothing more. He had bigger problems. But no matter how fast he drove, the image didn't leave him. A lone woman. Hand on her belly. Covered in mud he caused. The kind of guilt that lingers even when you pretend it's meaningless. By the time Naomi reached the mansion's gate, the guards were already running toward her in shock. Madam Naomi. You're soaked, please come in. She forced a small nod, stepping inside the shelter of the security post. I'm all right. Just misjudged the walk. They rushed to bring towels and blankets. She thanked them softly, though her thoughts were miles away. She had crossed paths with Daniel. And he didn't even know. Her heart ached, not because he didn't stop, but because fate had shown her the truth in the most painful way possible. Whatever they once were, they were strangers now. The mansion's living room glowed with warm light as the storm continued pounding against the windows. Naomi sat on the edge of a wide velvet sofa, a folded blanket around her shoulders, her hair still damp from the rain. Her dress had already been taken to the laundry room. A maid quietly placed a warm cup of ginger tea on the table beside her. Thank you, Naomi murmured, though her voice barely carried. The staff exchanged worried glances before stepping out, leaving her alone with the restless silence of her own thoughts. She stared at her trembling hands. At the faint stains of dried mud beneath her nails. At the memory of water splashing over her, heavy and cold. She knew that car. She knew the careless turn of that wheel. She knew the man behind it. Daniel? She whispered, pressing her palm to her forehead. The name alone felt like a blade sliding between old wounds. A thought rose inside her. Sometimes the one who hurt you most gives you a moment that forces your heart to choose between holding on or finally letting go. City hidden. A tear escaped before she could stop it. She had imagined seeing him again someday, yes, but not like this. Not drenched in muddy water. Not standing helpless on a roadside while the father of her child sped past, unaware of the life he helped create. She lifted her hand to her stomach, rubbing in slow circles. I'm sorry you had to feel that, she whispered. You deserve better. We both do. Her voice wavered. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Strong, steady, purposeful. Elias entered the room, his expression tightening the moment he saw her hollow stare. Naomi, he said softly, stepping closer. They told me you were caught in the rain. Are you hurt? She shook her head quickly. I'm fine. It was just unexpected. But Elias saw through it. He always did. He sat beside her but left enough space to honor the boundary she guarded so fiercely. You're shaking, he said. Let me get the doctor. No, she whispered immediately. Please, stay. The request surprised him, and her too. She wasn't used to asking someone to stay. She had spent years trying not to be a burden to anyone, least of all Daniel. But in this moment, loneliness pressed into her chest until breathing felt like a chore. Elias nodded once. Then I'm here. Slowly, he draped a second blanket around her shoulders. Naomi closed her eyes as warmth seeped into her skin. For a moment, she let herself lean back into the cushions, allowed herself to feel safe. Do you want to tell me what happened? Elias asked gently. She hesitated. If she said the truth, she would have to speak Daniel's name aloud. She would have to explain why seeing him again felt like both a blessing and a curse. She would have to open wounds she kept stitched shut for survival. I was walking back, she said slowly. A car passed by. The puddle. She swallowed hard. And I got drenched. Elias waited. Patient. Respectful. But you're upset, he said softly, and that doesn't come from rain alone. Naomi's breath hitched. Her fingers curled tightly into her blanket. Memories flashed: Daniel's smile, Daniel's frustration, Daniel's indifference the night he walked out. She felt the pressure rising in her chest like a dam about to burst. "I saw him," she whispered. Elias stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Daniel?" She nodded. "And he doesn't know about the child?" "No." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Lightning flickered outside, illuminating the room in a pale glow. Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low and steady. "Naomi, you don't have to face all this alone." Her eyes filled instantly. "I don't know what to feel." "You're human," he replied. "You're allowed to be overwhelmed." The tears finally broke free, one after another, silent but unstoppable. Naomi covered her face with both hands as her shoulders shook. Elias didn't touch her, not yet. He simply waited, grounding her with his presence. When her breathing finally steadied, he spoke again. "Would you like me to handle anything? To keep him away? To ensure he doesn't disrupt your peace?" She looked up at him, eyes red but clearer. "I don't know what I want," Naomi whispered. "But I know I'm tired, so tired of hurting." Elias's expression softened. "Then rest tonight," he said gently. "Tomorrow we decide the next step together." She nodded weakly, letting exhaustion settle over her. For the first time in months, Naomi allowed herself to lean just slightly against another person. Not for love, not for romance, but simply to stop herself from falling apart. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the woman who had been splashed with mud confronted the truth she had feared. Daniel was close. Daniel saw her. But Daniel didn't recognize her. And that hurt more than anything she had braced for. The storm had weakened by morning, leaving behind streets washed clean but heavy with humidity. Daniel sat at a small cafe near the mechanic's shop where he worked, stirring a cup of black coffee he didn't really want. He kept replaying the image of the woman on the roadside, the outline of her figure, the protective hand braced over her stomach, the slow, steady walk through the rain. He didn't know why the memory wouldn't leave him alone. He had splashed dozens of pedestrians in his life without giving it a second thought. But this one, something felt wrong. Something felt familiar. A quiet reflection tugged inside him. When a moment refuses to leave your mind, it's rarely coincidence. It's usually a truth trying to force its way through your denial. He rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling sharply. "Who walks alone like that?" he muttered. "Who looks that fragile in a storm?" His coworker, Felix, slid into the seat across from him. "You look like you didn't sleep." Daniel ignored the comment. "Ever have a moment that feels like you missed something important?" he asked instead. Felix shrugged. "Every time my girlfriend talks to me." Daniel gave a weak laugh, then his expression darkened again. He stared into the coffee, its surface trembling slightly from the ceiling fan. "It's weird," he continued. "I splashed someone last night without meaning to. Pregnant woman. And I can't get it out of my head." Felix frowned. "You sure you're okay? You don't even like kids." "It's not that," Daniel snapped, then lowered his voice. "It just felt wrong." Felix studied him for a moment, then leaned back. "If she's pregnant and walking in a storm, maybe she needed help. Maybe you should have stopped." The words hit Daniel harder than he expected. "Stopped." Check. Recognized. But he didn't. Not even for a second. He pushed the coffee away, appetite gone. "Let's get to work." The mechanic's shop buzzed with activity. Engines revving, tools clattering, customers arguing over prices. Daniel tried to bury himself in work, but thoughts kept intruding like static. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing in that downpour. Mud running down her dress. Her hand on her stomach. Her slow steps. Something familiar. Something painfully familiar. While tightening a bolt under a sedan, he froze, eyes widening. That height. That walk. That posture. A memory flickered. Naomi walking toward him on their wedding day, one hand holding her dress, the other brushing her hair behind her ear. Her small steps. Her soft silhouette. He sat up abruptly, banging his head on the hood. Felix rushed over. "Bro, what happened?" Daniel didn't answer. His breathing quickened. His pulse pounded in his throat. "No," he whispered. "It can't be her." But the voice in his heart whispered otherwise. He stood, wiped his hands on a rag and marched out of the shop. "Where you going?" Felix called after him. "Break," Daniel muttered. "I'll be back." But even he wasn't sure if he meant it. Daniel walked the road where the incident happened, scanning every corner, every puddle, every detail. He checked for footprints, even though the storm would have erased them. His frustration grew with every step. "Why am I doing this?" he muttered. She left. She moved on. I should let it go. But he couldn't. He had the unsettling feeling that a truth was unfolding around him whether he wanted it or not. He stopped near the exact puddle he had driven through. The mud was dry now, cracked from the heat of the midday sun. He crouched, touching the ground. And then he saw it. Something small. Something faint. A dropped handkerchief, white, embroidered at the corner with a single blue letter. M. His heart thundered in his chest. Naomi. Her initials. Her style of embroidery, delicate, curved, always in blue thread. Daniel closed his eyes, gripping the handkerchief so tightly his knuckles whitened. It was her. The realization hit him like a punch. He had splashed mud on his own wife. A wife who was pregnant. A wife he didn't even recognize. A wife who had vanished into a different life. He staggered to his feet, panic slithering through his veins. "Where is she?" he whispered. "Where did she go? Who is she with?" Anger rose inside him. Regret followed. And beneath both, an emotion he didn't want to name, fear. He looked toward the wealthy district far across the city, the part of town he rarely entered. Caravans of black SUVs moved regularly along the main road, escorting the rich to their mansions. And then a chill ran down his spine. The woman he splashed was walking toward that direction. Daniel clenched the handkerchief. "I'm going to find her," he said under his breath. "Even if she doesn't want to see me." He didn't know that fate had already set the next collision in motion. One that would shake the mansion, his assumptions, and every belief he clung to. The mansion gates gleamed in the late afternoon sun, wet from the storm that had finally passed. Daniel's truck rolled to a stop outside, mud still caked along the tires, his heart hammering like a drum inside his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to run from what he might see, but the truth clawed at him relentlessly. He stepped out into the gravel driveway, rain-spattered coat sticking to his shoulders. He saw her immediately. Naomi. Standing near the entrance, wrapped in a cream-colored coat that brushed the floor, her hair still damp but elegantly swept back. She cradled her belly instinctively, the sunlight catching her face in a way that seared itself into his memory. "Naomi," he called, voice raw and strained. She froze. Her eyes widened. Recognition flashed, but also fear. She took a step back. "Daniel," she whispered, her tone defensive. "What are you? How did you?" He cut her off, voice shaking. "I had to see you. I didn't know. I didn't know it was you. I never meant." Her hand went to her chest, pressing against her heart. "You never meant? Daniel, you splashed mud all over me. Over my baby. Do you have any idea what could have happened?" His chest tightened. "I didn't see you. I didn't, God, Naomi, I didn't recognize you." Her eyes glistened, hurt etched into every line of her face. "Then why are you here? After all these months? Are you trying to torment me?" He flinched at the accusation, but the words were true. He had been running from his own pain, his own guilt. "No. I came because I couldn't stop thinking about you. About us. About what I lost." Naomi shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Us? There is no us, Daniel. You left me. You didn't listen. You didn't wait. You didn't even try." Daniel's fists clenched, mud from the driveway still staining his sleeves. I thought I did. I thought I gave you space. I didn't know you're married to him? To a billionaire?" Her lips pressed tightly together. "Yes, to Elias. And he's kind, Daniel. He respects me. He protects me. He didn't abandon me when things got hard. Unlike someone else I could mention." Daniel's jaw tightened. "So that's it? You moved on? Just like that?" Naomi's voice grew steadier, yet the tremor in her hands betrayed her. "I didn't move on. I survived. And I had to. For myself, and for my baby." Daniel's heart twisted, torn between relief and heartbreak. The truth was clear. Naomi had endured and he had missed everything. Rage and guilt collided violently in his chest. "Do you hate me?" he asked quietly. She looked away, the sky behind her now golden with sunset. "I don't know if I hate you, or if I'm just tired of loving someone who left." He stepped closer, desperation spilling into his voice. "Naomi, I love you. I always have. I'm sorry for everything. Let me make it right. Please, let me be there for you, for the baby." Her lips quivered. "Daniel, you can't just show up and expect everything to go back to what it was. I'm married. I'm not. I can't." The words cut him deeper than any physical wound. He lowered his eyes, chest heaving. I know. But I can't stop feeling this. Even if it destroys me, I had to see you. I had to try. A pause hung heavy between them, filled only by the whispering wind and distant birds returning to the soaked gardens. Naomi's arms crossed protectively over her belly, her fingers curling against her coat. I don't know if I can trust you again, Daniel, she said softly, almost to herself. I don't know if I can, if I want to. Daniel's hands dropped to his sides, mud and rain still clinging to him. His voice cracked. Then tell me what I can do. Anything. Just, let me prove I haven't stopped caring. She looked up at him, eyes wet, conflicted. You can't fix what's broken. You can't take back the months of fear, the loneliness, the nights I cried wondering if you even remembered me. And you splashed mud on me. On my baby. Daniel stepped closer, almost pleading. I'll do anything. Anything. Just, don't shut me out completely. Her body stiffened, but her eyes softened, betraying a flicker of hope amidst the anger. She wanted to run, she wanted to hide, but a part of her still remembered the man who had once made her feel safe with a single glance. The driveway seemed smaller now, the distance between them charged with everything unsaid, everything lost, and everything that could be regained. And in that tense silence, both realized, the real storm wasn't the one that had drenched them hours ago, it was the one inside their hearts, threatening to shatter everything if either of them gave in to pride or fear. Naomi's tears fell freely now, mingling with the remnants of mud. Daniel's chest heaved with guilt, regret, and longing. The first real crack in their resistance had formed, but whether it would become a bridge or a chasm remained uncertain. The mansion was quiet now, the storm a distant memory, leaving only the soft hum of evening settling over the grounds. Inside, Naomi stood by the tall windows of the drawing room, her reflection mirrored in the glass. Outside, the gardens glimmered under the last rays of the sun, damp and fragrant with rain-soaked earth. Her hands rested lightly on her belly, fingers tracing circles without thought. Every nerve in her body seemed alert, every thought circling around Daniel, the man she had once loved, the man who had splashed mud over her only hours before, the man she was suddenly forced to face. Could she trust him? Could she risk opening herself again to a man who had abandoned her when life became complicated? Could she risk letting him see her vulnerability? Her mind drifted back to the day she left. How she had packed a single bag, swallowed her tears, and walked away, believing it was the only way to survive. Every step away from him had hurt, yet it had been necessary. And now he stood at the edge of her life again, knocking at the door she had sealed for months. She exhaled sharply, her heart a drum in her chest. I can't go back, she whispered almost to herself. Not fully, not yet. Daniel sat on the edge of the same sofa, his hands gripping the fabric, knuckles white. His mind replayed every word she had spoken moments ago, the anger, the hesitation, the faint glimmer of softness when she looked away from him. He was painfully aware of the damage he had caused, the months lost, the child he had never known was growing inside her. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, jaw tight. I can't let her go again, he murmured, voice low. Even if it's just to prove I can. I have to show her that I care. That I've changed. That I'm here. The thought terrified him. Rejection could shatter him completely. Pride, anger, guilt, it all threatened to paralyze him. Yet fear wasn't strong enough to stop him. Not when he knew she was within reach, within sight, and within his heart. Naomi turned away from the window and saw Daniel watching her. Their eyes locked, and a silence settled over the room that spoke more than words ever could. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said, voice trembling. Not yet. Not fully. Daniel's hands clenched again. I don't expect forgiveness immediately. I need a chance to be here for you. To protect you. To be someone you can rely on. Her eyes welled again and she pressed a hand to her lips. She wanted to run, to lock herself away, but another part of her, the part that had never stopped loving him, stayed rooted. What if I can't? She whispered. Then I'll wait, he replied, voice steady. As long as it takes. A tear escaped, sliding down her cheek. She allowed herself to feel it fully, the fear, the longing, the heartbreak. In that moment she realized that the choice wasn't about him or Elias, not fully, it was about her, her child, and the possibility of hope in a life she had almost given up on. Her heartbeat thundered. She inhaled slowly. The child inside her kicked, as though affirming the decision she was about to make. I don't know if I can love you fully again, she admitted, voice raw. But I won't push you away either. Daniel's chest lifted slightly, a breath he hadn't realized he was holding escaping in relief. He took a careful step forward. That's all I ask. That's more than I could hope for. They stood there, facing each other, the weight of the past heavy but shared. And in that shared silence, both realized, the choice had been made. They could let pride win, or let vulnerability guide them toward each other. Naomi exhaled again, this time with resolve. I'll try, she said softly. For us. For the baby. But, Daniel, understand, I won't forget the hurt either. You have to earn my trust again. I will, he promised, voice breaking slightly. Every day. No excuses. No shortcuts. Just me proving that I can be better, for you, for our child, for us. The room was quiet, save for the faint ticking of a clock. The storm outside had cleared completely, leaving the garden shimmering and peaceful. For the first time in months, both of them felt the tiniest spark of possibility, the fragile beginning of reconnection, of healing, of love returning after betrayal. Naomi placed a hand on her belly and smiled faintly, eyes meeting Daniel's with tentative hope. We'll take it one day at a time, she said. Daniel nodded, swallowing back emotion. One day at a time. And in that moment, the tension, the pain, the fear, all of it began to shift. The impossible had been faced, and while the path forward was still uncertain, both understood that the next step could be theirs to take together. Even amidst heartbreak, even amidst anger, even amidst months of separation, love still had the power to heal. The morning sunlight spilled across the mansion gardens, warm and golden, casting long shadows across the dew-specked grass. Naomi stood by the window in her nursery, the soft pastel walls surrounding her like a cocoon. The baby's cradle rested gently in the center, rocking slightly in a faint draft. Her hands rested on her belly as she watched the leaves shimmer in the light, recalling the storm that had changed everything. She thought back to that rainy day, the mud splashing, the heartbeat of panic, the image of Daniel behind the wheel. The memory still stirred a pang in her chest, but it was no longer just pain. It was a reminder of how far they had both come, how fragile and precious the path back to each other had been. Her reflection caught in the window, soft, weary, yet radiant in her strength. Elias, the man who had been her support through months of care, had left early to attend a meeting. Naomi felt a wave of gratitude but also clarity. Her heart had been divided for years, but now it knew where it truly belonged. A knock at the door startled her. Come in, she called softly. Daniel stepped inside. His coat still bore faint streaks of mud from the driveway months ago, but his expression was steady. There was a softness in his eyes, a quiet reverence in his posture. No anger. No pleading. Just presence. Morning, he said quietly. Naomi exhaled, letting tension fall from her shoulders. Morning, she replied. He moved closer, careful not to startle her, and gestured toward the nursery. I wanted to see you. The baby. To make sure you're both okay. She nodded, gesturing toward the cradle. He's sleeping. He's healthy. Daniel's eyes softened, scanning the room, the little blankets, the tiny shoes neatly placed on the shelf. He knelt by the cradle, whispering gently, Hello, little one. I'm Daniel. I've waited a long time to meet you. Naomi watched, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. The baby kicked gently as if responding. She took a careful step closer. He's, responsive. Daniel looked up at her, gratitude and longing mingling in his gaze. Like you, he said softly. Just like you. Naomi's chest tightened. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of months of separation, fear, and resilience. She took a tentative step closer, hands brushing his as they both rested near the cradle. Daniel, she whispered. I don't want to hide from the past anymore. I can't. I don't want to. He nodded slowly, swallowing emotion. I don't either. I've made mistakes, many, but I can't undo the past. What I can do is be here now. Every day, every moment. Her eyes glistened with tears, but they were not tears of pain. They were the first of hope, of relief, of love regained. They stood in silence, the nursery holding the weight of their reunion. The baby stirred, yawning and stretching tiny arms, as if acknowledging the fragile but growing connection between them. Naomi finally spoke, voice gentle. Do you want to hold him? Daniel's eyes widened with reverence. May I? She nodded, stepping back. He lifted the baby carefully, cradling him against his chest. The little one's eyes fluttered open, gazing at Daniel as if recognizing him, and Daniel's chest ached with joy and reverence. Naomi's hands reached to touch Daniel's arm, hesitant but firm. He has your eyes, she said softly. Daniel looked up at her, tears brimming. "And your heart," he whispered. "I promise to protect both." For a long moment they simply stood together, two souls weathered by storms, brought together again by fate and courage. The tension of the past months melted into a quiet understanding. Love, once true, could survive even the harshest separation. Later, as they walked in the gardens together, the baby resting safely in Naomi's arms, Daniel took her hand, fingers intertwining naturally. The mansion's gates gleamed in the distance, a symbol of both privilege and responsibility, but what mattered now wasn't wealth or status. It was the life they were building together, fragile yet resilient, anchored in love and trust. Naomi looked up at Daniel, smiling softly. "It won't be easy," she said, "but we can do this. Together." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Together?" he echoed. The sunlight shimmered across the wet grass, reflecting the bright green of new beginnings. Even the traces of mud on their shoes, the remnants of that first accidental splash, felt less like a stain and more like a memory they had survived. Naomi laughed softly, a pure sound that carried away months of fear and doubt. Daniel laughed too, a sound full of relief and love. The baby kicked again, a tiny reminder of the miracle that had sparked the beginning of their second chance. They looked at each other, realizing that what they had feared would destroy them had instead bound them stronger than ever. And in that quiet, perfect morning they understood. Daniel had returned not as the man who abandoned her, but as the man willing to face every consequence for love. Naomi had survived not as a victim, but as a woman who knew her worth and could choose who to let in. Their child, tiny, perfect, and alive, was a living testament to love that endures, even through storms, mud, and mistakes. They embraced gently, letting the sun's warmth settle around them. Outside the gardens glistened. Inside, hearts beat in tandem, synchronized by shared history and the promise of a future built on trust, forgiveness, and unwavering love. Daniel whispered, "I'll never let you go again." Naomi pressed her forehead against his shoulder. "I won't let you," she murmured. The baby yawned, and for the first time in months all three, father, mother, and child, felt safe. The storm was over. The past had been acknowledged. And the future, uncertain but bright, awaited them. Have you ever experienced a love that returned when you least expected it? How would you handle a second chance? The mansion, once a symbol of isolation and separation, now stood as a home filled with laughter, warmth, and hope. Every trace of mud, every scar from the past, every tear shed, all were reminders of resilience, courage, and the power of love that refuses to let go. As the sun fully rose, glimmering over the gardens and windows, Naomi and Daniel stood together, hand in hand, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one.